All right, let's get on to the main topic of climbing the ladder. So there was a post. We had this idea before this post came out, right? That there was a post 11 hours ago on the competitive WoW subreddit, which I think could be a cool way
I
to,
thought it was a good. I thought it was a good post for like us to show, right?
yeah, which is the differences between top 1% and top 0.1% in M plus, which was a pretty interesting topic. Was there anything you liked in the comments and stuff here, Tettles?
I think like the top comment there talking about the rank one Mythic Plus title being more of a time investment than a skill check is actually kind of interesting, right? They were also talking about like they were they were saying like how much of a limiting factor is like personal gameplay going to be relative to like how much is like actually like group oriented gameplay. Like where does that like differentiation click? Like where is it possible to pug to versus you need like a 5-man group that you're absolutely playing with. And then kind of like, is it the question also like posed in the main topic of is it absolutely necessary to run with a set group or can you pug it?
Yeah, I really like this comment that says the 22s to 25s pugging is like worse than the 26 to 28 pugs, which I find that to be 100% true. Like, because
Hundred percent.
there's no
Yeah.
reason to be in the 22 to 25 range except if you're like, pushing it for fun a little bit. But if you're pushing for fun and you're in the 22 to 25 range, like versus in the 26 to 28 range, those players are a lot better, right? And it's like, uh, the 22 to 25s. I don't know. I feel like those are much harder to pug. I think that's a weird quirk of where the rewards are, right? Because like you just do 20s if you want the rewards, and then if you're pushing, there's kind of this gap right afterwards.
So Tirtha, like how did you like break in from that, I guess top 1% to that top 0.1% level? Like really what kind of elevated you to even push that threshold? I mean, obviously you're even higher than that. You're like what top 5 AUG in the world right now or something, I think.
Yeah, I'd probably have to think through it, but when I first started in Shadowlands, I'd watch a lot of streams and I'd brick a lot of keys, just trying things as a tank. And getting my first 20 was a big accomplishment, and that was right before Portals came out. And so I remember, everyone was super excited. Everyone invited each other to be friends, and then once the Portals came out, everyone reunited. And since it was just a week or two after that, and we all got our Portals together, which was cool at the time. And then probably the next season, the same group of people, we all got hard stuck at maybe like 23s or something like that. And
That's
we
some
just
improvement. Nice.
yeah, I mean,
2023.
I think the game kind of naturally, season from season, it kind of allows you to get a little bit higher each season naturally, just for various reasons. But
True.
you kind of when you especially when you're pugging and working your way up, you have to have a mindset that no group is forever, and that if you don't have people around you that are kind of like telling you your weaknesses, or if you don't have a way of like kind of figuring out why you suck, you're gonna be hard stuck. Like, it's not really an elegant way of putting it, but you have to constantly be evaluating, what am I bad at? And if someone doesn't tell you, then sometimes you just don't find that out. And for me, I was playing Vengeance, and if you played Shadowlands Vengeance, the class was really bad. It was like exceptionally bad.
It was still the best tank in season 1.
Yeah, season 1 it was.
But the suckers was good. It's because everything else was bad.
Because everything was even worse.
But it's like you just learn little things. Like I remember when Survival Hunter and Warlock was a thing. I was playing Vengeance and I was just jumping all over the place because I ran out of defenses. I got to get out of here. And the Destro Warlocks in my group were pissed. I mean, they're just pissed. Like, why are you moving these mobs?
By rain of fire.
Yeah. And so like you learn things over time. It's like, okay, I got to stand still for the Warlocks. These stupid Warlocks. Got to stand still and let them just rain of fire. But then you naturally learn how to like spread your cooldowns out. Get more uptime on the mobs. And
that's a funny point. Is like in a tank's progression of skill, they at one point they have to learn how to kite, like you said, and then they realize that the next like 2 key levels up, they have to learn how to not kite to stay in longer for more damage. It's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Sorry, didn't mean to throw you off the rails.
No, that's fine. But I mean, just the natural progression of that is, you start marking targets, you start calling kicks. I think by the time I got the title for the first time on my tank, I think what I was doing was just calling kick targets initially. And then I wasn't really doing any of the kicks myself. And then I would just stop communicating at the start of the poll. So, I mean, like, I was still exceptionally bad at the game in the grand scheme of things, because nowadays, the good tanks all, call kicks throughout the poll. They call the stops throughout the poll, which doesn't have to necessarily be a tank thing, but just as you move up, some of those skills get better, and then you improve your UI so you can see things cleaner. You get weak auras that alert you, and take away some of your cognitive load and do some of that work for you. There's just like a bunch of areas you can improve on.
How does playing with better players also change that for you think?
Well, it just, I think once you reach the top of like the pugging scene for M+, you start seeing a lot of these same names over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you start playing with a lot of good players, it's kind of a snowball effect where players, since they see each other all the time, you start getting known as, oh, you play with X, Y, and Z, and then that person might be friends with X, Y, and Z, and therefore, if you ever group with that person, you kind of have like this parasocial, I kind of already know who you are mentality, and it's like it's a lot easier to connect with people. But then it just snowballs all the way up. They do things a little bit differently, you do things a little bit differently, and through repetition, eventually you just kind of grind your way up.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, WoW is just a game of preparation, repetition, and there's some skill in there, but it's once all the good routes are out, everyone kind of adapts to them, and things just naturally get faster. And just having a plan going in, you'll just naturally work your way up.
I think it also helps to know like score is like your foot in the door, right? To actually getting into groups sometimes as well. You're not going to necessarily be invited to a group if you have no score. Now, sometimes that does happen. There are sometimes if you're like in a high enough level guild and you play like a specific spec that people know is going to be good that season, you can kind of jump in if you don't have much Mythic Plus experience. But like kind of what Tarithal was saying, and pugging and kind of just evolving as a player and having score every single season, that kind of gets you a foot in the door to get invited to groups, right? To play with this level of players that you're trying to, right? And that doesn't necessarily have to be like rank 1 level, but that it is like your foot in the door in regards to like even getting into that 20, even getting into that 22, if that's like your goal.
Well, there's definitely a hierarchy, right? Like people want, when people list a key, they want the people signing up to that key to be the same score as them. Like that's just the truth. And that rarely happens. Usually, if you're trying to do 26s, usually you're going to have people that do a bunch of 24s sign up to your key, right? And so people have a hierarchy. They usually invite by score, and then after that, it's probably a meta class that's pretty close to the same score, and then after that, it's probably a random friend that signed up. Then after that, it's probably everyone else, right?
If you've already timed that queue, you're also almost automatically going to get invited, right? But that's not how Mythic Plus works, right? Like you want to be doing a key level higher.
Yeah, and it's actually really good. Maybe it's just anecdotal, but if you can push a lot at the beginning of a season and just get ahead of the pack, that usually snowballs too. Like you don't really have to be playing a meta character. If you're just like a really good tank with a high score, people are going to invite you. Same for healers. DPS, maybe not so much, but I mean, if you're 200 score ahead of someone else, they're going to invite you more or less.
That's definitely a thing for LFG as a DPS for getting invited via friends. Unless depending on the meta, you might be struggling to get invites.
That's true. Yeah, both those points.
Kind of depends.
Yeah, I think the point of like, if you want to climb as well, you need to not be attached to any specific group, right? It's a tough one to hear for a lot of people as well, because like you find a group of people you like playing with them or whatever, and then I think a lot of people get to this point where it's like, man, I wish I could keep playing with them and also reach my score goals, and you do kind of have to pick one or the other, unless you get really lucky and you just RNG into a group that is also capable of growing at the same speed that you want to. But like most of the time, that's just not going to be the case. So
I think Greg was
like in rating, you got to pick about it. Yeah.
I think Greg was tanking a 26 or 27 in LFG the other day, and they finished the key and they timed it, and like everybody left the group, and he goes, "It's so weird, the culture of LFG sometimes. How you join the group, you don't really say anything in party chat. You time the key. Nobody says, "Hey, is anybody doing anything else? Does anybody want to keep going? Anybody want to keep keying?" Instead, no, you just leave the group and you say nothing. You never see these people again. That's actually such a weird dynamic. That's
like the biggest weakness I've seen in pugging is like when I plugged my rank 1 title anonymously in season 4 of Shadowlands. I did like a series on it. We would time like really good keys, like 26, 27s or something, and then everybody would leave if they didn't need the immediate next key. they'd be like, oh, I don't need the lower Kara 27. I'm gonna go find another key. So then they just didn't have this insane group that they were just in because they wanted to try to get like some instant IO. But if they would have just stuck around for maybe 2 or 3 keys, they probably would have gotten twice as much as if they decided to leave like they did.
Yeah, I think IO is really, once you get a couple titles, you kind of stop caring so much about it. A lot of,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's really the truth. And a lot of the top players, honestly, they just love the game and they just want to time higher keys or just play with their friends in higher keys. And I mean, there obviously are people that, try to get rank 1, like actual rank 1, not just the title, but they chase like each other competitively. But there's a lot of people at that level that they just play the game a lot and they just jump in random groups of friends and just try to do the best they can, just continuously get better at the game.
I think knowing that not all keys will also be scored is kind of like a healthy mindset to have, right? Like not everything, you're not going to time every single key, and so like being attached to the idea of timing that key before jumping into it's not super healthy. But on top of that, like sometimes it's fine to do a key that you haven't done or like you've already done at that level, even if it's not going to be score for you. It's like it's good to get practice.
It's good, yeah. It's just
Also, again, like the networking value, right? Of if you find a group of good players that are like 9 groups out of 10 aren't going to be that good, right? They're going to be medium or bad, right? And if you happen to get to play with some people that are as good as you actually want to always be playing with, it's worth giving up doing a few keys that aren't score for you so that you can keep playing with them, and so you can if you play with them a lot, then you're going to have a lot more success than pugging. But it requires you to take that short-term hit of not doing keys that are score all the time.
exactly, yeah. That's my point. Like you have to do, let's say you do one key with a group of 4 people you've never met in your life. You're not going to learn much about them in that one key, and you're not going to pick up like how the key went so well or how the key went so bad off of just one key's worth of time. But if you did 2 or 3 keys with that group, if possible, then you'll start to see like people's strengths and weaknesses come out, and you can probably learn a lot and be like, oh, that's why we did that at Talzar 2 minutes faster, because this tank player does things like this, like that kind of information is super valuable.
There's a lot of value in just finishing a key too. I've been playing a lot with Dorky, and he's really good about that. Like we could break a key within the first 2 minutes of the key, and we'll finish the key. Like we'll just go through the motion, and we'll make it all the way through at 29 Neverbloom, and we'll battle the last boss for 30 minutes until we kind of figure out our cooldowns. And that's actually really important, and then maybe at the last second we'll decide, okay, let's just 2 chests the 26 or 27 or whatever. But there's a lot of value in just getting a lot of reps in really high keys, because it's not really well known, but especially in the lower keys, you don't know what's going to kill you until you get to a high enough key level. Like you don't really know what's dangerous in a key until you get there.
And this isn't even just exclusive to 28s or 29s like Tarithal was talking about. This could actually just be like, what is a push key for you, right? This could be like, oh, you're doing a 22. So you got it off of 21 black or cold. That's pretty easy to do. And so you get the 22 and you're like, oh, this feels a bit out of my range, but let's go try it and practice it. And then if you go through the motions, like you're saying, maybe you're able to do it on 21.
That's a good point too, Tarithal. Like let's say you just do weekly 20s, and let's talk about black or cold actually. Like you go through the archer area and you're like, okay, I mean the danger here is knife dance, right? But then in higher keys, the danger is all of a sudden shoot from the archer, because it'll just clap you in half.
Yeah.
So you gotta just like learn all the new things you have to live.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised too with like how bad you can play and still get close to the timers this season. Like there's
On
probably
some of the keys,
there's a lot of groups that give up way too early. We did an Atal Desire 28 last week. We had 22 deaths before we got a single count in the dungeon, because we were trying to pull all the juggernauts on the left in one pull. And we timed the key with like a minute and a half left.
Wait, you CC all the casters or something?
No, I think we just pulled them all.
Just pulled everything?
Just
Yeah,
do
we
it.
just pulled them all. Yep.
I have
All
very
right.
fond memories of just doing that pull over and over again in like MDI practice, just the entire left side.
Oh yeah, the unholy meta.
Yeah, the unholy meta. That was a good time.
Uh,
You do kind of notice that there are some people you play with that suck at the end of the dungeon and are pretty good at the start of the dungeon, because they just do this over and over again, right? They just leave halfway through dungeons, which is also another small benefit of staying through to completion, is like you actually get the reps in on the end of the dungeon as well, like the last boss, which is often one of the hardest parts.